This is Research Like a Pro, episode 340, Using AI to Analyze Tax Data. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogist professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the authors of Research Like a Pro, a genealogist guide. With Robin Worthland, they also co-authored the companion volume, Research Like a Pro with DNA. Join Diana and Nicole as they discuss how to stay organized, make progress in their research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go! Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com. Hi everyone, welcome to Research Like a Pro, and hi Mom.
Hello, Nicole. How are you doing today?
Really well. I am writing, and I have noticed that my favorite method right now with my two monitors is to have my research log on one side and my Word document on the other monitor. But then what do you do when you want to look at a record and you need a third monitor so that you can have all three open? Well, what I've just figured out that I like to do is I'll just drag the Airtable research log base in front of my Word document because I want to write the citation in my Airtable log and view the source record at the same time. So then those are the two screens that I have open. Then when I'm done making the citation and entering it into my log, I copy the citation and move the Airtable base back over into the group of tabs on the other screen so I can see my Word document again. And that has been really helpful because it forces me to write my citations in Airtable and not put them in directly into Word, where I might then forget to put it in Airtable. I want to have them in both places and make sure I'm tracking everything properly. But writing as you go, I kind of needed this method of where am I going to put all my screens as I'm working. So that's what I figured out, and that works well for me.
I love that. Yes, I know sometimes we wish we had 3 screens, and I know a lot of people do have 3 or 4, but I don't have room on my desk for that. So have to be creative with how we move our windows around. So good job.
Right? Yeah. Well, for announcements, today we have the Irish Naming Convention webinar coming up, Research Like a Pro webinar series for 2025. And we're excited to have Susan McKee presenting on January 18th. And she will be talking about Thomas Delaney and how he was the father of Catherine Kate Delaney. And her research will focus on Queen's County, Ireland in the mid to late 1800s, and really talking a lot about the Irish Naming Convention and how it helped in this case to predict family names and really help with the search for family units in Irish records. She uses Catholic parish registers, civil registration, and the 1901 Census of Ireland. So we look forward to that. If you haven't registered yet, you can do so at familylocket.com/shop. Then click on webinars, and you'll see the 2025 webinar series there. Well, the next DNA study group begins February, and so that's coming up in just a couple weeks. You can probably still sign up if you want to, so go to our website to see if there are any spots left, and then you can join us. And this is just such a wonderful experience to use DNA evidence to aid with your research questions or to verify your family tree and pick a specific branch to focus on. So if you haven't tried that yet, you might want to join us because you really get the motivation to do your actual DNA analysis while you're in the study group. If you'd like to join us as a peer group leader for upcoming study groups, especially right now, looking ahead to the next study group, which will be documentary focused in the fall, send us your application and a research report example that you've written. And to get our weekly updates of new content and coupons when applicable, just sign up for our newsletter. It comes out every Monday. Also, we'll see you at Roots Tech March 6th through 8th in Salt Lake City, as well as NGS Family History Conference in May 23rd through the 26th in Kentucky. So we hope that you'll be there in person to say hi.
Right. We are excited about new conferences coming up. It's always fun.
Well, today we get to talk about using AI to analyze tax data in a research log. And as we mentioned in the last episode, tax research involves extracting a lot of data and transcribing it. And there's all kinds of things in the tax list, depending on where it is and the time period. And if your ancestor owned land, you might find land descriptions, personal property, associates, the amount of tax paid, and more. And if you're working with a run of tax lists for several years, then you might be dealing with a lot of information. And you might even have more than one individual in the tax list that you're tracking, especially if you're tracking the whole family. So once you have carefully extracted all of that data, then the next challenge is analyzing it.
Well, this was so fun to learn how to use AI to help me because, as we talked about in the previous episode, I had taken all the Weatherfords in Dallas County for the years 1847 to 1864 and extracted the data. I ended up with 126 rows in my special tax table, and it was honestly pretty overwhelming to see how much data there was. And I could group it by individual and sort in various ways. So I was starting to make sense of all the data. But then I was writing my report on Henderson Weatherford. And I really wanted to get that data into my research report. And because we've been working so much with AI, and whenever I'm doing a task, I always think how AI could help me. So I decided to see if Claude could help out. And I have been using Claude as the Claude projects to put my reports in and to get help. So I already had a project set up in Claude for this Henderson Weatherford project. And I was able to have it help create a table for me to put in my report. It was a little bit tricky to figure it out, but what I have learned is that if you want to have a table created, you have to get your Airtable base into a CSV file. You can't just copy all the data out of Airtable and paste that in to AI, whether using ChatGPT or Claude or another large language model. Well, you can do that, but it's hard for it to understand and read it. But it can read a CSV file, so comma separated value file format. So in Airtable, it can be a little tricky to figure out where that is. And what you do is you just click the down arrow next to view, and then right there it will tell you to, or prompt you to download a CSV. And then you'll have to select where to put that on your computer. So I had a Dallas County tax list file right in my Weatherford folder. And so I put it in there. And then I had basically this other version of the exact data that I had put into Airtable in the CSV file.
Well, once you had a CSV file, then you could put it into Claude. So, for those of you listening who don't know what Claude is, it's just like ChatGPT, but it's made by another company. Well, in Claude, you can upload or attach a file, like a CSV file, and then you give instructions to the AI telling it what to do with that file. So here's the prompt that Diana used. Using the CSV file titled Dallas County Tax Lists, provide a table showing information chronologically. You can also specify the columns for the table, but in this case, since the data provided was already divided into columns, it was interesting to see how AI would do the table without instructions. And Claude actually did a good job and accurately transferred all the data to a table, but it ran out of memory, I think, and truncated it, stopping at 1852 when it was supposed to keep going for several more years. So, an additional prompt in the conversation was used to create the table for all of the years. And what it ended up doing is dividing it into 3 portions. So, that was good. With the tables created, Diana was ready to add them into her research report, which was being written in Microsoft Word.
Right. And I was happy with how it just took that data and made this beautiful table. But the table that you see on the AI screen, if you try to copy that and put it into, say, Word, I tried that and it came in a little wonky. The formatting was kind of weird. So then I asked it to provide that in Markdown. We've talked a bit about what Markdown is. If you would like to know what Markdown is, let me read you the description from ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to define it. So Markdown is a lightweight markup language used to format text It's popular for its simplicity and ease of use, allowing writers to create structured documents without the need for complex formatting tools. Markdown files use plain text with special characters to indicate formatting, like headings, lists, or links, making them easy to read and edit. Common uses include writing documentation, notes, blog posts, and README files in software projects. So, if you're going to use AI a lot and to create specialized things like tables, when you ask it to provide it in Markdown, then when you go to Word, you can use the Writage plugin and it just lets you paste Markdown. And then the table came in perfectly with all the headings and all the data, everything organized exactly how I wanted it to be. So that was really, really helpful. Writage is something that you purchase to use with Microsoft Word, just a one-time purchase. It's, I can't remember, maybe $20, $30. It's not too much. And after you do add it, it appears at the top in the ribbon at the top of Word. You can also use paste from Markdown in Google Docs. So if you're using Google Docs, you have to just enable that. And then you can also use paste Markdown. So it's really helpful to learn a little bit about this whole idea of Markdown and how you can work with that with AI. I had never used it before AI, and I think Nicole, you're the one that figured it out.
Yeah, I needed a way to get the information from AI into Word and look really nice because I was spending a lot of time reformatting things. And that's kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. So Writage helped a lot. Well, Google Docs, all you have to do to paste with Markdown in Google Docs is go to the top menu bar, click on Tools, which is in between Format and Extensions. Once you're in the Tools dropdown, click Preferences. Within Preferences, there's just a little box to check that says Enable Markdown. So once you do that, you can right click and see the option to paste without formatting, or paste from Markdown. And the little icon is like a clipboard with an M on it. So pasting from Markdown is what you would want to choose. So that's in the alternative click there, whether it's a Mac control click or a PC right click, you can access the paste from Markdown in Google Docs there.
Right. It's so handy to have that because if you don't do that, then what you get pasted has all the little hashtag marks and all sorts of different little formatting marks that come in. And then you'd have to go and delete those, spend time fixing it up. So being able to paste as Markdown and having it just come in perfectly is wonderful. And with 126 rows, yeah, I obviously did not want to do any adjusting myself on that. So I did adjust the columns a bit to have the sizing work, and I had to make the font smaller so it would all fit on the page. But I was so happy with how it came in. And for my report, because there were so many rows, I put it in the appendix. So I decided to put the full table in the appendix so I would have all that data right there, but I didn't want it to take up so much space in the body of the report. So with the table created, then I wanted to see if AI could help me do some analysis. And I ended up having 18 different Weatherford individuals named in the tax records because I was going from 1846 to 1864. And so there were a lot of people, the children would grow up and start being named in the tax records themselves. And I was a little bit overwhelmed with how much data there was. So even though I had the appendix, I decided I wanted to have a little summary for each person. I'll kind of give you an example of one of them that I had Claude create for me. And remember that I had uploaded the CSV file to Claude to the project. So it had all the data. And I figured that this was a perfect use of AI's language and analysis capability. I had done all the data extraction, and now Claude could review it and help me make some conclusions. So here's what the summary was for Jefferson Weatherford. And first it said the date, 1847, first appearance. And then it gave me several bullet points that he was the first settler among Weatherfords and records, settled on the Trinity watercourse. Initially, no property was listed. became most extensive property owner, multiple land acquisitions from 1848 to 1862, acted as the administrator for William Weatherford, the guardian for Francis Weatherford, the agent for Sarah Weatherford, and the administrator for Hardin Weatherford. He owned slaves, and he had significant livestock holdings. So, of course, the first thing I did some fact checking to see if that was all correct, and it was. It was spot on, and it pulled together a lot of different entries for Jefferson and was able to make that good summary. All right, let's have a word from our sponsor. The new year is the perfect time to start or restart your genealogy research with fresh eyes and new goals. Dig even deeper into your family history with newspapers.com, the largest online newspaper archive. If you're a genealogist, you know old newspapers help you find forgotten stories and fill in the gaps between vital records. That's where newspapers.com comes in. A subscription to newspapers.com gives you access to over 1 billion pages of historical newspapers from across the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond. Whether you're tracking down your great-grandmother's obituary or uncovering a long-lost photo, you'll be amazed at the treasures waiting for you in more than 3 centuries of newspapers. And when you find something interesting, newspapers.com makes it easy to share with family and friends. You can even save it directly to your ancestry tree. For listeners of this podcast, newspapers.com is offering a special discount of 20%. Just use the code FamilyLocket at checkout. Kickstart your year in genealogy with newspapers.com. Well, with my Henderson Weatherford case study, I really wanted to learn a little bit more about what was going on with Henderson because he was the subject of my report. So I wanted to see what I could decipher from the tax list. So I asked Claude to summarize Henderson's tax lists by year. And I noticed that 1860 is the only year that he actually paid a tax. He was missing in 1861 and 1862, and then in 1863 and 1864, a Samuel Beeman paid the tax for him. And the summary told me that 1860 was the first appearance and that he only had 2 acres of property, that he had 5 horses and 9 cattle and $90 of miscellaneous property and $760 total, and paid a poll tax. Now, because I had already uploaded some other information about Henderson, I had my research log in there, and AI looked at all of that and discovered that he was a blacksmith per the 1860 census, and so it added that those were likely blacksmith tools, which I thought was really interesting and probably exactly right. Then in 1863, it summarized the Samuel Beeman paying the tax for him and noted that there were 41 acres that he paid taxes on. And then in 1864, again, Samuel Beeman paid taxes, and it was for 50 acres. So I made some discoveries from the tax list about the possibility of Henderson perhaps having moved or having died, with Samuel Beeman paying some taxes for him.
Yes, that's so good. And, he could have been an agent just paying for him while he was gone, or he could have been like an administrator or executor of the estate who was in charge of paying the taxes at that time. It's really cool to see the information coming together and correlating together with him being a blacksmith and only owning those 2 acres in 1860. And then just kind of thinking about the miscellaneous property being blacksmith tools. I love that.
And it did prompt me to go look for a land record for him for those 2 acres, and I did find that. And I found that he purchased them and then sold those 2 acres right away. So there's still some mysteries, and I still haven't found any record of this 41 acres that he was paying taxes on, or the 50 acres. So I will be continuing the research on Henderson Weatherford to learn more about what was going on with his life. The interesting thing was Samuel Beeman. I knew I had seen that name before, so I went looking in Henderson Weatherford's children, and his daughter had married Samuel Beeman.
Oh,
So
Son-in-law.
Yeah, it made sense that he was acting as an agent. We do have his widow, Clumsy, appearing by herself in the 1870 census, so I had suspected that perhaps he had died, but I'm not sure if he has died, at this point or if they moved. I'm not sure. More research.
Right. So he was alive in 1860. He wasn't on the census in 1870. And in 1863, Samuel Beeman was paying his taxes.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right, though, to not assume that he died. I mean, you're right, he could have moved. So it's good to consider all the possibilities and continue digging deeper. Hopefully, you can find more about those other acres that he paid taxes on.
Exactly. I also am curious about Missouri because Clumsy is in Missouri by 1870 and several of their children get married in Missouri. So I really want to do a good timeline of those marriages and see if I can pinpoint a time perhaps they moved back to Missouri. They'd been in Missouri, moved out to Texas, and then it seems like the family goes back to Missouri. So I am even wondering if I could find him in a tax list or another record in Missouri. Maybe he dies in Missouri. And
Right.
I don't
Well, and in
know.
the Civil War, it seems really likely, what if he was, not there because he was in the war and then he died in the war?
Yeah, perhaps he joined up and was serving in the military, and that's why Samuel is paying his taxes.
Right.
So there has never been a record hint or anything pop up about military service, but I haven't done the focused research. If he was in Texas, I'd have to try to see where he would have signed up, or maybe they moved back to Missouri and he fought with the Missouri group. Yeah, there's a 10-year period there where I have some research to do, and with the Civil War in this area, so much turmoil and record loss, so it'll be an adventure.
For sure. And it reminds me of the research I did about the Eisenhower brothers. One of them, Moses Eisenhower, his family had moved to Texas, but he went back to Missouri, and that's where he served from. And there was a different Moses Eisenhower who served in Texas, so it was pretty tricky to figure that all out, but I eventually figured it out. So you're right, he could have gone back.
Yeah, I had forgotten about Moses Eisenhower. Yeah, it makes you wonder if they were out in Texas, the Civil War started, and they wanted to go back, and maybe he wanted to fight. I don't know if he would have been Confederate or Union. Missouri was split with people of both, but Texas was pretty heavily Confederate.
It seems like a lot of Confederates went to Texas to be able to keep their slaves and way of life. So maybe that's why. But yeah, that'll be interesting research to look into.
Yeah, I'm excited to continue on. It's so fun to return to these people that we researched years and years ago and then learn how little we knew about them when we first started.
Yeah, we just scraped the surface and made a little mistake here and there along the way, sometimes big mistakes. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what you were able to do with this analysis by Claude AI. So, you had generated these summaries of each person. Now, you wanted to put things into your report. And so, you gave Claude several prompts to refine a narrative that you could add to the research report based on the tax data. Sometimes it can be really hard to write about taxes. And so this is a fun usage of AI to help you with the writing, especially when you're looking at a lot of data and sometimes writing from a table is hard to know what to say. So you then added your own knowledge and experience with the research. So let's read some parts of this narrative that you wrote along with Claude as a helper or an assistant in that role. We didn't let AI write everything for it, but it was helpful probably to get it started and then tweak it here and there. Well, here is what it says. Henderson Weatherford's first appearance in the 1860 tax rolls correlates with his occupation as a blacksmith per the 1860 census enumeration. The tax list reveals Henderson owned just 2 acres valued at $250, purchased from the William Masters survey. This small plot was likely carefully chosen to establish his blacksmith shop. While the acreage was minimal, his total property value of $760 reflected a well equipped tradesman. He maintained 5 horses valued at $300, possibly including work horses for his shop, 9 cattle worth $120, and $90 in miscellaneous property, likely representing his blacksmith tools and equipment. He dutifully paid his poll tax of 50 cents along with the state tax of $1.45 and county tax of $1.01. By 1863, Henderson's tax situation had changed. His records now appeared under Samuel Beeman per H. Weatherford, suggesting some form of business or property arrangement with Beeman, his new son-in-law. Henderson's oldest daughter, Mary Ann, had married Samuel Honeycutt Beeman on 29 August 1860 in Dallas, and the couple lived near her parents in Syene. Samuel was an older man, about 33, and would be a likely candidate to act as an agent for Henderson. Henderson has expanded his land holdings to 41 acres valued at $205, now from the John Lanier survey. His total property value had increased significantly to $1,035, resulting in higher taxes, $6.18 for state tax and $1.54 for county tax. Curiously, Samuel paid the poll tax of $1. Perhaps Henderson had died in 1862 and these were back taxes, or he was away fighting for the Confederacy. The final tax record from 1864 reveals a significant change. The property was still listed under Samuel Beeman per H. Weatherford, but noticeably, there was no poll tax paid. This absence of a poll tax, combined with Beeman's continued management of the property, strongly suggests that Henderson Weatherford had either moved or died. The property now consisted of 50 acres from the John Frost survey valued at $150, with miscellaneous property, likely the blacksmith tools and equipment, valued at $650, for a total value of $800. The state tax was $4 and the county tax was $1. 1864 was the last listing for Henderson Weatherford. The tax records revealed his connection to Samuel H. Beeman and either Henderson's death or move by 1865. If Henderson died in Dallas County, no probate was documented. Wow, well, this is just really good. I'm really impressed with the way that you wrote this with AI and how easy it is to understand. It includes great sentences that give you helpful ways to understand the tax records, and it kind of just transitions really smoothly from paragraph to paragraph.
I was really happy with this. And I did make some changes and adjustments and added some things, took out some things, but I was pleasantly surprised with how well AI did in writing this. And because it was drawing upon the data, it didn't have to hallucinate or make anything up. It had data to work with. And I think that's so key in using AI. There were a couple of things that I hadn't even thought of that it came up with. For example, where it talked about the back taxes. I thought that was really interesting, and I had actually seen that in the tax list. There were a couple times where a different person had to pay back taxes, and so the AI apparently saw that and made that assumption and put that in, but it could be absolutely correct because we don't know. I used the perhaps, so it was fun to have that little bit of assistance. Well, when we're working with AI, we really always have to recognize the benefits and limitations. And of course, I think as everyone listening will recognize, there were so many benefits for using AI throughout this whole tax research and writing. But we do have to know limitations and understand the limitations of AI, that we have to do our job to fact check. And we also have to make sure that we agree with all of the conclusions. I didn't always agree with everything, but many times it pointed out something I hadn't noticed and wrote it in a way that, like you said, just made it really easy to understand. So if you are wondering if AI could help you write your report, absolutely, it can be so helpful. And if that is a stumbling block that you have writing, I would highly recommend that you start learning how to work with AI and have it help you, because it can turn your research, 126 rows, into some very good sentences, some good summaries, and a nice table to include in your report.
How wonderful. That probably increased your efficiency by so much, especially since you had taken so much time to extract all of those tax records for all the Weatherfords in Dallas County. That was time consuming. So then being able to have some time saved when you were writing the report was probably wonderful.
Yeah, I think if I had had to go through and do the summary for each of those individuals, it would have taken so long, and I likely would have messed up a date or some of the numbers. There's so many human error type things that can creep in when you're working with data. So it was really nice to have AI help me do some of those little bit more complicated things, because it's really good at reading things and then spitting it back out.
Right. All right, everybody. Well, if you're working with large amounts of tax data like this, try using AI to see if it can help you with your analysis and writing. Best of luck in all of your research. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our books, Research Like a Pro and Research Like a Pro with DNA on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our online courses or study groups of the same names. Learn more at familylocket.com/services. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our courses. To get updates in your email inbox each Monday, subscribe to our newsletter at familylocket.com/newsletter. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We read each review and are so thankful for them. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.